Hey everybody, it's Austin Ward. It's another Lettermen Live, another Tuesday in Columbus, Ohio, and this one has not been as festive as the previous 7 weeks. We got Beanie Wells, former Ohio State running back, NFL running back, Jake Stoneburner back in with us for the first time in a little bit, former Ohio State and NFL tight end. Maybe there just wasn't a long line of people that wanted to come talk about 49-20. I don't know, but that was a shocker. Beanie, we sat right here. We all made our predictions for last week. Ohio State was a 13-point favorite. Some people were saying, Jake was among them, I talked to him last week, let's hold off here. Going to Purdue can be pretty tricky, but there's no way I would have thought something like that could happen.
No, I wouldn't have thought it in a million years. Obviously, when you look at this football team, you look at the talent level that we have compared to a Purdue team, and if I'm not mistaken, Purdue lost to Eastern Michigan.
That's correct, yes.
Eastern Michigan. There's no way that you can sit here and tell me that, Ohio State was going to go in there and lose that game. If you would have told me Purdue was going to score 28 points, I would have believed you. I mean, Ohio State had given up some big plays, but 49 points. All I can think of was listening to Jeremy Birmingham last week cry out that Purdue was going to put up 40 points, and man, oh man, boy, was he right.
We don't want to give Birm too much credit. I mean, he still thought Ohio State was going to win that game and thought they were going to win by 14 just because the offense was going to be so effective. And in some respects, it was. Dwayne Haskins set the school record for passing yardage, but it came in a loss because the red zone, Jake, was a disaster. I don't know, maybe throw to the tight end once in a while down there. Might be the suggestion that I'll steal from you, but it's, again, Beanie talks about the defense. I'm a little bit puzzled by what's happened to the running game, and especially that short yardage and red zone attack.
It's the running game. I mean, if you can get in within that 20 to 10-yard red zone and you got a running back who can score from there on and the team's worried about it, it opens up the whole playbook. There was no worry of that. It was the only guy who's going to beat us is Dwayne's arm.
Right.
And they played for that. And they had guys not make plays. I mean, there was jump balls that, maybe Purdue made a better play, but, it's like we are expected to make that play. And it was just a whole game of terrible execution, whether it was not being able to run the ball, not making the big plays, those field goals at the beginning, of not being able to score in the red zone. It just stacked and stacked and stacked. And not even talking about the defense.
So you got the defense, the offense, and then you mentioned the special teams. They miss a field goal. They have a costly penalty, a roughing the punter penalty. They give up the fake field goal right before halftime. That's the momentum swinger. I could probably keep going. At the end of the game, Johnny Dixon lets a kickoff roll down to the 1-yard line because he's thinking about the new rule. It doesn't call for the fair catch. Has to avoid taking a safety, getting the ball out of the end zone. Like every single phase of the game, there's a breakdown. I mean, that's I guess, how you lose 49-20.
Yeah, you can't have those. That's the thing. I mean, when you're a team like Ohio State, whose ultimate goal is to win a national championship, to get into the college football playoff, and you're playing a team in which you are supposed to beat, they haven't played like that all year. They haven't went out and beat the teams that they're supposed to beat the way that they're supposed to beat them.
Right.
And that's, cause for concern. And I don't know where that issue lies. Is it something that they're being taught? Are the schemes a little bit too difficult for them in the defensive room? What's being taught in the offensive line room? Are those guys not, taking correct steps? Are the plays a little bit too complex for them? Something isn't right, and it's not just on one side of the ball or the other. It's both sides that we're seeing.
Yeah, this is Lettermen Live, brought to you by Byers Auto. We're rehashing what happened. It's the off date. We don't have to look at another opponent right now. We can just talk about what is wrong with Ohio State. And guys, I know how hard players work during the week. I never like to be one to, point out specific names or, lack of energy or effort or toughness or any of that stuff, because I tend to side with the players over the coaching staff that's making, in some cases, millions of dollars. So if that's my take, then I have to ask and raise some legitimate questions here about the linebacker unit with Billy Davis, which I think has enough talent. The offensive line with Greg Studrawa, those are the top two names right now that I think those groups have to get it done. I don't think that J.K. Dobbins and Mike Weber suddenly lost the ability to run the football, but the offensive line isn't getting things done up front. And then you have a new coach in the secondary with Alex Grinch. That's been a position that's not gotten any better since the start of the year. And I think through 8 games, you can no longer blame inexperience. So am I off base here? Or are you guys seeing personnel things or scheme? Which one is bigger concern to you?
Well, I mean, at the end of the day, the players got to execute.
Okay.
I mean, nothing out there is that difficult. Some players are going to put you in bad situations, or coaches are going to make bad calls. But at the end of the day, we're the one making the plays. We got to go out there, execute, make those extraordinary plays, make those guys miss. You know, I know Mike Weber and Dobbins, they might not have the most room, but man, you got to make some of those dudes miss and break those tackles.
Right.
Like, you're one of the best backs in the whole entire country. You got to, you know, maybe step it up a level if another guys aren't. Back to, you know, sometimes scheme is going to put you in bad situations, but I don't know if maybe we thought too highly of some of these players, because at the end of the day, I think a coach can only do so much. You can only get so excited. They can only help you in certain aspects. At the end of the day, the players got to go out and execute. They can teach you bad technique, bad this, but that doesn't lead to blowouts. And I think something, whether they're, like Beanie said, maybe they are teaching too much and guys are out there just thinking too much. And there's a lot of thinking and not just playing football and going out there and just honestly just beating ass, because they should. They should have whooped Purdue's ass. And they didn't. And it was, whether it was execution or the players, I don't know. It's hard to put it up. It's hard to put one blame either way, because I don't want to, you know, dog a coach or dog a certain player, because it's the whole thing.
Yeah.
But I think at the end of the day, the players got to go out and make those plays.
I mean, I agree to a certain extent. I mean, the players absolutely do have to go out and make plays, and you should have some type of pride in yourself and wanting to play better. And obviously, the goal for a lot of these guys is to win a bunch of games, win national championships, and be able to make it to the next level, and that's the NFL. And guys just aren't out there playing like that. But from a schematic standpoint, when I watch the linebackers come up to the line of scrimmage on countless plays, it makes me wonder what the hell is going on and what is being taught from a defensive standpoint, because that's making the job of the offensive lineman that much more easier. When I got a linebacker 2 yards away from the line of scrimmage, or hell, even up on the line of scrimmage, no, he doesn't have that far to go to get his hands on him. Once he gets his hands on him, we don't have those physical linebackers that can shed those blocks and that can run out side to side as we've had in years past. Now they're washed down and washed out of the play, making it that much tougher on a pass play on the secondary.
Jeff Brom just talked about this. He was asked more questions about Ohio State after beating them than he was, I think, last week beforehand. So, and he was more in-depth about the issues for Ohio State than Urban Meyer has been. And one of the things he brought up was with the linebackers playing that close to the line of scrimmage, and they had just seen Minnesota use the RPO to get right behind them and have this huge space in between the safeties and the linebackers. That's not generally how that level looks, right? I mean, Jake, you know, you worked over the middle of the field. You don't usually have 15 yards between a linebacker and a safety.
Well, it's kind of like know your personnel. Like, we've had linebackers in the past, maybe they could play up on the scrimmage because they were the fastest guys on the team.
Sure.
They could recover really well. They could shed those tackles. Nothing against those guys. That's just not the position they need to be put in. And it's, then it's back to maybe the scheme. Okay, we got these two linebackers we're trying to make them play like the Ryan Shazier out there. That just doesn't happen. And it's putting them in bad situations, really, really bad situations. And I can't tell you if you're having linebackers up with the ball, whether it's up in the line of scrimmage, or on the outside. If I'm running a play right up the gut as a running back, you're like, are they serious? Like, this is easy. This guy's not even in the play. I'm going right up the gut, and it's little things like that you would think they should be able to change like in an instant. Like, that's where you make adjustments at halftime, and like, okay, we're seeing this, and that's. I guess you could look in that more in depth. Like, that's a little concerning that they're not adjusting to point blank obvious things. I mean, the Purdue coach was like, that was a problem. And it was like, they had a whole game to do that. Where, like, at what point did they say, okay, this isn't working?
Yeah.
And it's like, where do we go?
What's you guys take on the man-to-man coverage deal? Obviously, we know that's what we've run here for a number of years, but we've also had a number of first-round draft picks in that secondary that made it easier to run those coverages. But now we don't have that personnel. So why doesn't it come to a point in time where Urban Meyer gets with Greg Schiano and those guys say, you know what, we have to adapt to what we have, opposed to saying, you know what, we're going to do my system, and my system is going to work because it's worked for so many years past. That's not what the good coaches do. And these guys are good coaches. That's why I can't figure out why they aren't making those adjustments.
From the schematic standpoint, I tend to defer to you guys every single time. You're the ones that have been out there and done it. Zach Bourne has said here on Buck IQ that he would like to see some of the cover 8 and zone stuff go out there because that better suits Ohio State's personnel. I think, I'm just from a big picture perspective, the reason it hasn't happened, Beanie, is I don't really think that Urban Meyer realized how bad the situation had become on defense. And that's not because he has buried his head in the sand or any, whatever that. He knows that there's an error, but I think that he defers to the way that they've structured this staff, that Greg Schiano is sort of that head coach of the defense, and he let that go. And Schiano has been very stubborn and very adamant that they're going to keep playing that because it works for them, and they challenge, or it's worked in the past. And now Urban, I'm just telling you, he has finally realized in the last couple of weeks, and I'm not saying it's because of because of a loss, or if because somebody might have slipped some stats onto his desk and said, hey, you're about to have the worst total defense in the history of Ohio State football, which is the rate that they're on right now. I think he's finally realizing that there is something that has to be changed, and you have 2 weeks now. Like, you still have a chance to win the Big Ten. We talked about that right off the bat, Beanie, and we'll talk about that more coming in. But you have 2 weeks now. Urban Meyer also didn't take part in training camp at all. He might not have been aware of everything that was happening here. There are a lot of kind of weird factors at play, and I'm throwing a lot of stuff at the wall here. But they know now, like, there's no margin for error, and giving up a bunch of yardage and maybe getting by Minnesota is not going to be acceptable when you play a much better offense like Purdue.
I think we've had an embarrassment of riches as far as defensive backs over the past 20 years.
Right.
And it might, these guys might develop into something, but like right now, to me, when you play man-to-man, it's because you got some dogs on the corners. They're going to lock them up. All right, we're good. They might get beat every once in a while, but at the end of the day, we're putting our money with them so we can do a bunch of other stuff inside the box. They're doing that same thing with guys who haven't proven themselves to should be even in that man-to-man coverage all game long. And so it kind of begs the question, like, what are they seeing? What are they, is something in practice really, but I don't know, because every time we did that man-to-man, it was because you had that first-round corner that was just going to lock that guy up. That part of the field was covered. We can do a bunch over here. Now it's exposing them. It's putting them in terrible situations.
I don't even think that it's just, the cornerbacks. I mean, you look, I talked about Alex Grinch, and Isaiah Pryor has had ups and downs. I thought a couple of weeks ago that he was turning the corner, but you saw what was happening with Jocelyn Wentz. They've refused to try guys like, Josh Proctor out there, 5-star at safety, to give him some reps. Like, if you don't fully trust that guy next to Jordan Fuller, like, that Malik Hooker's not walking through that door at safety to help erase some mistakes. You don't have Christian Bryant, who's going on Beanie's podcast and sitting in the back of the room. You don't have him in the back of the defense to help erase some mistakes. If you don't have that guy, I mean, don't play that system.
Yeah.
Like, there's a lot of strain on the safety in this system, and you have to be really good at it. And they wound up in situations where Rondell Moore is on a nickelback, and as good as Sean Wade might be, Purdue was going to take that matchup all night long, and that just wasn't. I don't know. That was the game where you needed to see an adjustment, and there wasn't one that came.
And it's hard to watch. I mean, it's hard to watch because, like you said, Jake, I mean, we've had an embarrassment of riches at that position, and just on the defensive side of the ball, to where, it meant something to be a silver bullet. I mean, and those guys were held to a certain standard. Exactly. Those guys are held to a certain standard. And, to watch time and time again, a defense not be able to, be compared to what we've had in years past has been tough to watch. And then on the offensive side, when we talk about the offensive line, how big is Michael Jordan?
6'7".
Michael Jordan, 6'7", playing center.
Yeah, he's the biggest center I've ever seen.
We got Billy Price last year was 6'3". Year before that, we had Pat Elflein was 6'2.5", 6'3". Year before that, we had Bourne, who was about 6 foot, 6'1". We're asking a guy who's entirely too big, in my mind, to be playing a position that is a little bit difficult for him, because he has to make a lot of calls. He doesn't have the leverage like the other guys have had, and that tradition that you want your center to have. This guy is big as he's big as a tackle out there playing center. He's just out of position in my point of view.
It's almost like they want, like, each year they put the most experienced guy back to center, because they've been, that's, the head of the O-line. That's the guy who kind of operates the line. He makes all the calls, and so, like, all right, we're going to put our most experienced guy here. But it's almost been a detriment to the whole O-line, because the best guy is in the middle, but he's out of position.
Right.
Those other guys they put in there fit them perfectly. Obviously, they won centers of the year.
Right.
Jacoby wasn't the biggest guy in the world, but he was out there dominating. I had Corey Lindsley, all same type of body build, and now you're putting, like, a left tackle at center. It's just, it's like, okay, I get it's a big position. You need a leader there. You need someone, but at some point, you got to have someone that's going to fit the position.
And just think about it. He's 6'7".
Yeah.
Think about him getting down in his stance compared to somebody that's 6'3", 6'2", and how much more he has to move to be able to get to a certain level or to get leverage on a guy that he's blocking. Just not, when you do the math, it just doesn't work.
Defensive tackles or nose guards, they're not 6'6", 6'5". No. They're the short, stocky guys that
eating them alive.
That the smaller guys get into. You need that 6'7". That's for length. That's built for the DN. That's built for the length. He's going against guys that are just going to get right into him like that because of the size difference. And I'm not in those meetings, so I'm not going to harp on one thing or the other because I don't know. I don't know that exactly what they're preaching, but those are some glaring errors that just from an outside you can see. It's like, how, do they not see that from in there?
What I think is so weird about it, Jake, is that you look at some of these errors, and Beanie's been part of this conversation with me many times, and I've said this. I can understand the rationalization for all these moves. Like, okay, Michael Jordan moved to center because they felt better about the other guards that they had. Brady Taylor he's a fifth-year senior who'd never played, and they didn't think Josh Myers was ready, and they thought Malcolm Pridgeon and Demetrius Knox were going to provide something. They felt more stability at guard. Okay, I can buy that. That makes sense. The running game is struggling. Well, who cares? They're throwing for 400 yards a game. I'm cool with that. You're scoring points. You're the second most proficient offense in the country. Okay, I can see why you're maybe not worried about the running game. You hold Minnesota to 14 points. You shut them out for 3 quarters. Okay, cool. You force the turnovers. You might not feel a lot of panic. I bought into all of that, and I think that it was rational to do so. I can only imagine that they think they're 7-0. They're winning with this formula. Let's not upset the apple cart here.
Right.
But, and I guess it might be human nature to think, I don't want to mess with this winning formula. Maybe if I do this, it'll create a bigger problem that I didn't anticipate over here. Well, instead they just let the problems fester and fester, and then it blows up. And that's one reason why you didn't just lose a game by 1, you lost it by 29.
In all my career at Ohio State, and I'm sure Beanie, I'm sure Christian and Moon can all, we never got blown out. It was, some really bad losses to some crap teams and stuff we definitely should have won, but blown out, no, because we had at the end of the day, it was like it was almost back asswards what they got now. Our offense was run the ball, and if we don't pass it, okay, punt it. And then it was like defense, all you. And that's just how we rolled. And it's kind of now the opposite of that, but we never got, there was no blowouts. There might have been some bad offensive performances, really bad, but we were always in those games because we had this defense that was out there balling. I can't tell you how many times offense, man, sorry.
Yeah.
Defense kept us in that one. Turnovers, and now it's almost the opposite, and it was always just the way we grew up at Ohio State. It was always defense comes. It was the silver bullets is what brought people there. That's what made Ohio State, and now it's we got this high-powered offense, which is all great, but 3 years in a row now we've been getting blown out in certain games. That wasn't a part of Ohio State's formula at pass. I knew that.
Yeah, you have 31. Yeah, go ahead, Dean.
He can speak for himself. Me and Will have definitely been blown out. We played against Florida National Championship.
Okay.
We got demolished.
Touche.
He's going to sneak that one in. Right?
Not by Iowa or
I was
Purdue.
going to let you slide.
I know you were. I feel like that happened.
We don't need to rehash all that for everybody who's still reeling from last week. But
it wasn't a Big Ten.
No, I'll get
who
what
lost
you're
to
saying.
Eastern Michigan. They had no business even being close in that game, and here we are that they lost by 29. The number 2 team in the country lost to a team that lost to Eastern Michigan by 29 in the middle of their season. It's not like the opener and they were all getting ready and it was
jacked up.
It was the night game. It was people have been telling you that hey, you lose to Purdue. They've done it. Don't and they just played right into their hands.
Yeah. So that happened. We're talking about it here at Lettermen Live, brought to you by Byers Auto. And Beanie, we touched on this a couple times now. Ohio State controls its fate here in the East Division. If they can win out in November, then they'll win the Big Ten championship. It's a manageable schedule when you look at it from my side here. They're not going to struggle with Nebraska. They're going to win that game easily.
You should just knock on wood on everything you said.
Maybe I should. There's no wood nearby. So, it's Nebraska. They've handled them the last 3 times very easily.
Yeah.
Nebraska finally got their first win. Maybe they install some stuff for 2 weeks. You get a little bit of a scrimmage. At Michigan State, I continue to not be that impressed with the Spartans. Their offense was a disaster last week against Michigan. Michigan gets part of the credit for that, of course, with their defense, but I think that's a game that should be won. At Maryland, that's another game with that talent advantage that you should win. And then right now, I still think that the Michigan game is a toss-up, but it's in the horseshoe, and Urban Meyer will definitely get that team motivated. To me, it's not that far-fetched for them to go 4-0, maybe even play Purdue in the Big Ten championship game. Who knows? And get a rematch. But I don't know. Am I crazy for that? What do you guys look now with this bye week and those 4 games left? What do you think is likely to happen here? What do you need to see when you come out on November 3rd to believe that might happen?
I think it's absolutely likely for Ohio State to kind of run the table and kind of control their own destiny. But you're also got to look at the fact that when you look at the teams that they're playing, we're playing some teams that can score, and those teams are going to, think what I said a couple of weeks ago. They're going to have that sense of blood in the water with Ohio State that, we can expose them in certain areas because we've watched lesser teams be able to do it. And you watch a lesser team beat them by 29 points. If you're a Maryland team they beat Texas at the beginning of the year,
Yeah.
they're going to have that confidence coming in, especially after how Texas has played. And they're looking to be a pretty decent team. They're going to have confidence coming in Ohio State saying, we can match up with these guys maybe.
I mean, one loss that you always just move on. And thankfully, they're going to have the opportunity. They got all the talent in the world. So to me, I still can't believe they lost that game. To me, I still think they're one of the most talented teams. And on any given Saturday, any team could win. When you get to thinking of national championship, college football playoffs, talent alone, they should win these next 4 games. We obviously see that hasn't worked out as well, but I think they're going to fix these kinks. They're going to get these things worked out, and it's all going to come down to that Michigan game.
Right.
We can all already plan it and all see it. It's going to be a top 10 matchup, and all the marbles are going to be on that. And then from there, you play Big Ten championship and go from there. But me personally, I think it's all going to come down to the game, and we've all played in the game.
That's really how it should be, right?
Yeah, and that Michigan could be 0-12 and go. It's still, you just never know. So I think they're fine. It's probably a wake up call because maybe they will see all those like, dang man, why are we putting the linebackers up there? Or all this stuff could start formulating, and they got 2 weeks to figure it out. So that's some silver lining in it all, and everything they still wanted to attain at the beginning of the year is still all out there. So it's.
That helps. We've seen this before, right? I mean, I was already still baffled and forever will be by what happened at Iowa, but now there's one more game that I will never understand, and that's Purdue. Maybe they'll bounce back the exact same way. Some of the pressure is on. We've brought up Billy Price's name. He was the one in the locker room after the game at Iowa last year saying that there were still some big rings out there for them to go chase. They needed to rededicate, refocus down the stretch, and they did that. We'll see. Isaiah Prince is supposedly that guy right now who's trying to take charge in the leadership role. It's going to have to probably take more than that with some of the issues that they have to clear up. Iowa came out of left field. Last week was a little bit something that was maybe building. But we'll be able to talk more about that again after another week of practice next Tuesday on Lettermen Live, brought to you by Byers Auto. We're not taking any weeks off here at Lettermen Row, not for an off date. Okay. He's Jake Stoneburner. That's Beanie Wells. That game's in the books. We'll talk about something else next week. How about? So we'll see you on LettermenRow.com for full coverage of Ohio State all year round. I'm Austin Ward. See you next week.